A look back at Week 3 in the NLL. Vancouver getting win number 1 by beating expansion New York. Mitch Jones had 9 points in that. Keegan Ball at 8, so they can score. Toronto bouncing back from losing their first game to beat San Diego out on the West Coast. After not scoring a goal in Game 1, it took Tom Schreiber less than 3 minutes to score in this one. He finished with a hat trick and 3 assists, too.
Yeah, I also probably should have gotten some style points for one of those goals.
The first one, Schreiber. Yeah, that was good.
New England with another huge win on the road, beating the Rush 12-8. Callum Crawford, Joe Resiteritz combining for 10 points there. And Georgia all over Philly. They're now 2-0. The Swarm on the year. Lyle with 7 more points in that one. And so that brings us to our power rankings for this week. And we're going to hit on just a couple of changes here in the bottom part before we get to the stuff that Tom and I actually disagree on.
Yeah, so we're pretty on the same page for these first 7.
We are.
Bottom 7, if you will.
A couple of notables. We mentioned Vancouver's win, so they jump up just above Philly. Flip-flop the two of them with the Warriors getting a win. And Halifax moving up, despite the fact they sit there at 1-0. They move up because San Diego jumps down because they lose to Toronto.
So San Diego's loss had moved them down from 6 to 9 this week. One of our biggest movers of the week.
They are 0-2. Two tough teams that they've played so far, but
great
they're
though.
0-2. They have not.
Game. All right, to number 6 we go, Travis. Let's see what we got here.
I have Toronto here in the 6th spot, but between the two, you look at Saskatchewan, who lost this week, and Toronto, who is on the way up after the win out in San Diego. I'm kind of torn between the two at 5 and 6. So what do you have?
I have Saskatchewan at 6 and
Why?
Toronto at 5. New England for me is pretty high up there. So I feel like the loss to New England for Saskatchewan is sort of an indicative. That's what I was going for. Indicative of how good New England looks so far this year. Not necessarily an indictment against the Rush. So I do think that.
Right, but yeah, but you also had Toronto, who also their only loss is also to New England.
Right. So they're both sort of in the same spot to me. It's almost a tie. You know, I mean, it feels like they're in the sort of the same spot. You know, Saskatchewan does have that 1-goal win, which was kind of close, wasn't all that impressive. I don't know.
We're not sure what to make of San Diego yet.
Right.
Because they played 2 tough teams. Toronto goes out there.
That is a nice win for Toronto going out there. I think that's really why I wanted them at 5, because I like the win going out on the West Coast.
Understandable. All right, so let's
I don't know how we arrived there, but we got there.
Let's put the Rush there at 6.
Indicative.
And let's put Toronto here at 5. That brings us to our top 4.
I got it now.
And the top 4 is really, when you look at it, it comes down to kind of eye test, because you've got Calgary, Buffalo, both 1-0. They've only played 1 game so far.
Yeah.
Georgia and New England are 2-0. The Swarm, though, have played 2 of the bottom teams in the league.
Yeah.
So let's start at 4. I've got Calgary in at number 4, dropping them a spot because New England's coming up, and I still just don't know what to make of them without Dane Dobbie. Because if he's missing for this substantial part of the season, 6 games, it's going to change their outlook for a substantial part of the year.
I still think, and I spoke to this last week, I think their depth's enough to get over the whole Dane Dobbie hump. But at the same time, I think what some of these other teams did was more impressive. And I think they're not the same team. He's the MVP for a reason, but they're built well enough.
That's fair.
From the ground up to be able to sort of sustain things as time goes off. I don't think they're going to drop too far.
I'm not saying they're not a playoff team. I'm just saying they're not up here.
They're not in the top 3 for you.
Right, exactly.
I mean, they're not in the top. I put them at 4 as well.
Okay. So
though it wasn't because of Dane Dobbie, it was because of something else. So that's also.
All right.
All right.
So who you got at 3?
Number 3, I think I have Georgia.
Oh.
I have Georgia at number 3.
I have Buffalo at number 3, and I actually have Georgia at number 2.
We had them tied last week, in case you're wondering
Buffalo
what that is
and Georgia tied at 2. I mean, really, Georgia's 2-0. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I know they've beaten 2 kind of bottom
doesn't do much for me.
But they've dominated these 2 teams. They're winning by 6, 7 goals. You hold both these teams to under 6 goals in Rochester and Philadelphia. And, I mean, those are substantial wins. I know you're not beating the cream of the crop yet, but they haven't played the cream of the crop. And they're beating them convincingly. They're not playing a tight game against a team that they should be dominating.
Buffalo did that with San Diego.
Yeah, it's true.
We only got one view of that. So I don't know if we should penalize Buffalo for not playing 2 games.
No, they're power rankings. They're week to week. Buffalo bounces back. They can move right up with an impressive performance.
We shouldn't penalize them for not playing this week either.
But so why would you you think Buffalo looks better?
Yes, I do. At this point in the year, I think Buffalo's a better team than Georgia, top to bottom.
All right.
Saw what Buffalo did last season. No, we're not talking about last season, but we know what Buffalo did last season.
You realize you were arguing for Georgia at the top #1 spot last week.
I do.
And now you're arguing against it. And Buffalo hasn't played a game.
Right. I just saw Georgia this weekend and thought more about it. And sometimes time heals all wounds. But you want
win with you.
Buffalo at 3?
I want Buffalo at 3 and Georgia
Buffalo
at 2.
at 3. We'll go with that. We'll compromise. That's fine. We couldn't compromise last week, but
I mean, once again, there are a couple spots in these polls in these rankings that are so I mean, you could flip a coin between them, and that's one of them.
The one we do agree here, the top #1 of New England. How about that?
I mean, you look at what the Black Wolves have done so far in 2 games, and in back-to-back weeks, you go on the road to Toronto, tough place to play. You win, and not only win, but won convincingly. They look good against the Rock. They were able to pull away from them, and then they got to go the next week, 7 days later, all the way out to Saskatchewan, and you beat the Rush in their home opener. And those are 2 really impressive wins, and by just that fact alone, you have to put them #1. Now, they look good as well, but those 2 wins alone are the 2 best wins in the league so far.
I can't agree more. 12-8 wins both times around. Like you said, they almost feels like they have dominated both games, and it feels like that they know maybe they've got something here. I think by some of the stuff they're doing off the floor as well, in terms of just being a cohesive unit, the guys getting along really well, and making this, taking this really seriously as their shots maybe this year to really make some noise with some of the different vibes the different teams have this year with the different drafts, the expansion draft, the new drafts, and how they did in the draft, getting Andrew Q. So I feel like at this point that they have that sort of good vibe going to start the season. See if they can carry that through. But I do like what they've got. I mean, it was sneaky last year. They could pick up Joe Resiteritz when Callum, just to sort of fill the hole for Callum Crawford when he was suspended. But then I think everyone was like, oh, they get to play together next year.
Right.
2 of the best scorers in the league, which now rivals some of their division rivals too.
Well, and I think last year was just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what Callum Crawford could be for them.
Yeah.
Because, look, they had Sean Evans, who was a spectacular player, former league MVP, who's playing for them. And I think this is what they wanted him to be. And so they flip-flop. They make the move to get Callum Crawford in there instead. And Callum Crawford is now living up to being the MVP candidate. You need to compete for a championship, and he's been that so far.
He doesn't miss those. I stand by. He doesn't miss those couple games last year. He's probably the MVP.
He still led the league in points.
He probably leads the league in points if that happens. Dane Dobie ended up doing that, but Callum, like you said, he had the most points per game last year out of anybody, which I think was really impressive. And now you're seeing him play with another guy in Joey Rez, who is looking also to bounce back from moving around a little bit last year and also playing pretty well. So it's been good.
And you got a good goalie in the back end.
And you bring in an American and Joe Nardella at faceoff, and that sort of helps you complete things a little bit better too. Yeah. He's been playing pretty well on the defensive side of the ball. They weren't really sure what they were going to get out of him. He's been good there, and then he's always been good carrying the ball, after winning a faceoff or what, mind you. So I think that's really played a factor there too.
And Davey had a dunk goal. Shout out Davey.
Hey, that stuff matters. That stuff matters.
Black Wolves, #1 team in our power rankings.
We'll see next week what happens.